What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the Biblical Hitman. It's your host, Steve, and I'm here with Ben Baumgarten, host of the End of the World News podcast. Love doing episodes with this guy. He was actually on the Continental Roundtable, the episode just previous to this one, and brother, that was a good conversation, man. I think we all kind of were able to decompress a little bit from the situation that just took place in the past week. Obviously, there's still more to uncover with that whole situation, and we're going to do it this episode, folks. But if you want to support the show, it's free. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, like the show, share it with your friends, drop a comment down below about your opinions. Don't really care if I agree with them or not, but that's where I can engage with the audience the best. So you could also support us on audio platforms as well. Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you consume your podcast content, we are there. You know, if you're generous enough, drop a 5-star review, a follow, hit that notification bell. You'll be notified whenever we do episodes. We're doing episodes 3 times a week, folks, Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. So strap in. Ben, welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you for having me back, and thank you for having me on that roundtable panel. I think that was definitely very helpful to kind of see where everybody was coming from, especially so quickly after that mass, high impact event that just rocked everybody's worlds. And it kind of was interesting to see where everybody was coming from. I also thought some interesting stuff from the guys that were hunters. And they were saying that the damage from the bullet that hit Charlie Kirk doesn't make sense if it came from that, person on the roof shooting with such a large ammunition shot.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what they claimed the round was. I think it was 30-06. But if anything, it's kind of like what the 308 was before the 308 was even around, right? It's a high velocity impact round. And man, I mean, as a medic, when I first saw what happened, I was like, this guy's dead. And folks, let me just get this out there to cover and blanket this episode, is that our prayers, our thoughts are out there with the families, the people that are involved, his kids, his wife, and Charlie. And, with the fruits that he showed, with where it looked like he was coming from, it looked like he had a personal relationship with Christ, and he is in a place where it's paradise. And so, and I'm sure he's not wanting to come back, to be honest with you, because at least from a lot of the NDE stories that I've read, everyone doesn't want to come back. They're in this place of peace. So, but this episode, I've got Ben on. We're going to talk a little bit about some maybe controversial topics. I don't know, but it seems to be that there is something behind what took place. There is a deeper correlation with other parties that possibly could be involved. And this is things we need to talk about. I know in that round table, we talked about the fallen, right? Demons, the principalities, the powers of darkness in these high places that govern in some sort of way our reality. And it's so hard for us humans to discern these things and to pick it apart. But when we have the discernment of the Holy Spirit, these things do amplify to us, in this 3-dimensional space. But Ben, brother, take it away, man. I mean, we talked on the phone a little bit. We obviously, have a lot to get into. So I'll let you just break it away.
Yeah, I think what you just said is where we should start off. What are we witnessing in this 3D material realm? And it's really, it's a war against humanity. However, it's a manifestation of a spiritual battle that's going on in a realm we cannot see between God Most High, Yeshua, the loyal angels, versus Satan and the fallen pantheon of the gods. And they are playing for our spirit. There's actual consequences what happens in this life. And, if you read Job, there's this battle going on in this spiritual dimension from Satan, the demons, and they're fighting for our spirit. So I think the way this plays out is these fallen gods and their demon offspring, they possess these worldly governors that Paul talks about in Ephesians, and they carry out the plans of their fallen angel parents. And essentially what their goal is to divorce us from God, right? They want us to act Antichrist. A lot of people associate Antichrist with the beast in Revelations, but the word Antichrist is never even mentioned in Revelations. It's only the beast. Antichrist is mentioned before that in the Gospels, and that's more of an ideology, right? You're Antichrist. So what did Christ tell us to do? 1, love the Lord God with all your heart, and 2, love your neighbor like you love yourself. And their goal is to get us not to love our neighbor. So I think ultimately everything we're seeing is to make us become tribal and hate the other. Because guess what? If we do that, Satan's winning and Satan's laughing at all of us right now, if that's what we're
Exactly.
doing.
Exactly, dude, and what I was I mean, I was talking to a guy obviously, I was working for 48 hours, so I had nothing else to do but to talk about this event with my brothers at the fire department, and we got into some political talk, we got into some indoctrinating talk, we got into some programming and conditioning. Obviously, those things, like, pertain to the situation that did take place, right? Especially when we're talking about the shooter. But I was just telling everyone, I was like, what are we doing here? Like, do we not know what is going on here? Like, I think that there is something big going to come out of this event. There is a problem reaction solution protocol being rolled out here. And with the reaction of the people right now, with the division between the two political parties, with the division between the neighbors, to be honest with you, and family members. It could be family members because I even in that roundtable episode that we did, I'm in the live chat. I'm in the live chat every episode. I'm in the live chat the whole episode unless I'm recording with a guest. But there were even someone in the chat saying that their cousin's granddaughter messaged them and said, "Yeah, I'm quote unquote happy what happened to Charlie Kirk." And it's like, man, the way people are thinking right now, these principalities are stirring the pot, right? I
Well,
mean,
we live in
they
a
are
world.
antagonizing something very evil that they want to bring out of the people. If you think of the fallen angels, if you think of Azazel, Semyaza, and you think of the other 200 that descended upon Mount Hermon, and they made a pact together, right? And they made a pact together to copulate with human women and to develop some sort of Nephilim race, some hybrid race that would attack the other bloodline, God's seed, right? So this bloodline of the woman, this is the whole thing when it comes down to this whole idea. And they also did what? They taught mankind how to do certain things, right? How to make armory, weapons, how to, put on makeup. But what it did to the human nature was exploit the sin that is naturally a part of our makeup. And so now when you have this situation taking place, it's I can see these principalities stirring the pot up again, trying to exploit the sin that sits not only in our hearts but also just in our minds. And the conditioning and the propaganda plays a big part in this.
Oh, I agree with you too. I mean, we live in a world of ops, bots, and psyops, and they use these high impact events to manifest reality in like a magic trick, if you will. And a lot of times these magic tricks require a blood sacrifice, whether it's this or 9/11 or what may have you. And that's the point. After this, high impact event happens, that's when the ops come out. That's when they start setting the narrative of what they want you to believe. And we don't even have to get political when it comes to this when discussing what happened. We've talked about this before, the sentient world simulation. And to me, when I see the way people react, it has all the markings that they definitely ran this through this type of, system, which what would produce the best possible outcome. And if you're, maybe people have heard this before, but we've talked about it. The sentient world simulation is this digital copy of America, and they have avatars of each one of us. And they upload all the conditions of our reality, whether it's economic, political, cultural, spiritual, you name it. So they really have a running model of the United States. And they run through scenarios and they determine what the best possible outcome, for that scenario is. And then I think they go with it. So I always say, if you want to know why they did this, and I'm not going to say who did this, and maybe we'll get into this, which I think we will, but why did this happen? Why did this high impact event happen? And all you have to do is listen to the responses of it. And to me, it's telling. Can I just read a couple of responses real quick,
Yeah,
which
bring
I
it
think
on,
this is
man.
multi-layered.
Yeah.
Um, I think there's two physical agendas that we're seeing here. I think ultimately it's under the spiritual agenda that we're seeing here. But here is one of the first tweets that came out, and it's from Ian Carroll. We don't have to get into him, but I'm just saying this got 11 million views, so it was all over the place. Um, Yesterday was a turning point for Israel-U.S. relations. Less than 24 hours, and the internet already figured out who the most likely culprit was. He was their friend. He basically dedicated his life to them, and they murdered him in front of his family. Israel just shot themselves. Now, another big tweet was from Harrison Smith. And if you're not familiar with him, he worked for the intelligence operation called InfoWars. Yes, it's an intelligence operation. And this tweet was from his about 3 months ago that really resurfaced and it spread all over the, social media like wildfire. The AI definitely pushed it as long as people retweeting it. And he said this, I'm not going to name names, but I was told by someone close to Charlie he thinks will kill him if he turns against. So this is definitely one of the most popular ideas if you're not going to believe the official narrative of what people are coming to. And I don't think that's by accident. I mean, if you look a lot at Charlie's career, he was, and like I said, this is not a judgment on his salvation with God. What's in his heart is between him and God. I'm not pretending to know where he went after this. And I pray that everybody gets to go to God, even my enemies. And I'm not saying Charlie is my enemy, but an eternity away from God for mistakes that we make in this earthly realm. To me, I don't wish that upon anybody. So I just want to lay that out. But he clearly, from the age of 18, was given the keys to the kingdom. If you're a political commentator, if you are an activist, or what I call a propagandist, he was given Turning Point USA at 18, millions of dollars to fund it. He, walked hand in hand with the agenda, and some of us did. I mean, I remember I used to support all this stuff, so I'm not even like saying it's bad that he supported this, but he got paid to do this, and he till this, till he died, he was supporting Trump. He was defending Trump when it came to all the Epstein stuff. And so you got to ask yourself, why would, this regime want to take out Charlie Kirk when he was such a partner to their overall agenda? And right before this, you saw that he was on Megyn Kelly, possibly, not possibly, but discussing the, what's it called? I believe the ADL's influence in American politics, how they're behind a lot of the anti-white propaganda that comes out. He was talking about there's rumors going around that, Netanyahu came up to him and said that, hey, I'll fund all of Turning Point for you. And he turned that down. So they're definitely within the psyche of, the truth tellers in the conservative right. There's definitely this idea, and there's a lot of breadcrumbs that lead back to that. And I'm not saying they're wrong for having this, that it is, or one of the intelligence agencies working with. I think that's probably what it is, because I don't think you can be pulling this stuff off on American soil without the involvement of some CIA operation, without the involvement of Charlie Kirk's private security. And that's a whole nother can of worms that we can get into. But they're definitely making it look like it was. And to me, that makes sense. The only part that doesn't make sense is that they killed Charlie Kirk for turning against it. Because if you understand prophecy, and that's what these principalities and powers and worldly governors are trying to fulfill or manufacture, that's when all the nations turn against Israel. So I don't think that they killed Charlie Kirk for turning against it. I think they killed Charlie Kirk so the nations will turn against Israel, which lines up with biblical prophecy.
And here's another thing too, man. Like, literally, when this happened, it probably took me 1 hour to fully believe what I'm about to say. But this is another JFK event in our lifetime, and the people back then, right in the '60s, I believe it was, they were seduced into this emotional response, and I don't take that play anymore. I'm a human still, so it still does affect me, but I recognize it now. What happened in 9/11? Same thing. Another emotional response. And there's only so many facts that were given in in the first few years of these kinds of events. Then things start to get revealed as time goes on. The light always shines on the darkness, right? In certain places in this world, if not everything in this world. It just may take certain time. Maybe there's FOIA documents that need to be coming out or whatever, but it's too early for all that stuff to happen. And I see so many people locked in to this seduction, into this emotional response. Now it's normal. It's a part of the human nature. But what we have to do as Christians is be journalists. We have to be skeptical of a lot of things. We have to be skeptical in some sort of way of what we're being told as far as what is the true information. It doesn't mean that we don't have to, you know, it doesn't mean that we don't believe what they're saying, but we do need to analyze these things and look deeper. We need to be making connections to the event that happened outside of the event, right? And I think that with some of the things that you said, I think that some people, like, maybe Charlie knew what he was involved in, but maybe the psyops and this spell that government can put on people from a young age through school or college or whatever, maybe they're ignorant to it because they're programmed to act in this certain way, right? Like they're programmed to want to be activists for a political side. And we can see that with a lot of different people. But with all the ties pertaining to Israel and how they are the puppet master in a lot of the things in this global theater, whatever it is, the connections are there. It's obvious. And when you were mentioning about the prophecy, I agree entirely. I think there is I don't think that that prophecy just happens because this is how the river flows. I think these things are conducted and fabricated to happen, and God's telling us this will happen. So watch and be sober and watch these things start to unfold. Why is the Bible constantly telling us to watch things? Because we'll see how things start to get played out. And it's just a part of separating your emotions oh so slightly and critically thinking about a certain situation. One thing about the truther community, which is I think a part of the community that we're in, everyone claims to be a critical thinker, but there's skill behind that. I will say that, and I think it comes with some experience because with experience you learn from your past critical thinking, events, right? We've been given the benefit. I don't mean it as in a benefit, but we've lived through a lot of psyops compared to I would say just you know boomers in the past. Even though there was psyops then, but we're in the information age, bro. We're in, if anything, what's called now the disinformation age. Everyone looks at their cell phones to get news or to interpret what is true in their reality. But we can distinguish the difference between that. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think you said something really interesting is we have when thinking critically, and that's what us truth tellers do, we have to take the emotions out of it. And that's what's so demonic yet brilliant about these fallen entities. They take what makes us human and uses it against us in these high impact events. Like I was curious, like there's kids that we know of that are dying all day long, some in Gaza that are just getting their, bodies blown up by these bombs that did absolutely nothing. Yet this video had such an impact on the population. Um, you know, and I think they do that so we don't think rationally, and that's when they can start programming us to believe what they're believing. And you said it was kind of like with JFK. And I agree with that, right? You can just see that from the multiple shooters, all the, nonlinear warfare, who did it, where did the bullet come from? But I also drew a similarity with MLK. Now, this is where we're going to get really deep, and I don't know if your viewers know much about this, but MLK, in my opinion, was a puppet of the system. You start diving into his relationships with Jacob Rothschild. His father was a Prince Hall Freemason. And what his role in the whole system was to pacify the civil rights movement. I don't think the controllers of America wanted America to burn down in the present if, in the process of all of that, if they turned towards Malcolm X. So they put in this puppet, MLK Jr. And if you look at some of the CIA documents, he wasn't necessarily the pastor that everybody thought he was. But what you see there is the system taking out their own if it fulfills their agenda. And I think kind of we see that with Charlie Kirk. And also, I think you can be part of the system without fully knowing what you're doing. Right? I do think that when you're young, he was 18 and I was like that too. I was, Republican through and through or libertarian or a combination of the two. And I thought politics was really it. And there's nothing I wanted more than to get into politics. So um I'm not necessarily that Charlie was 100% in on it or knew exactly what he was doing, but um, he was definitely part of the agenda. I just think it shows that they have no problem taking out their own if it's greater for the overall agenda. And I think that's exactly what we saw, like they saw with Martin Luther King.
Well, dude, I mean, I make a connection. I'm with you there. I know exactly what you're talking about, especially when we get into, um, oh man, I'm going mind blank. I had her name. Who was Princess Diana, right? Princess Diana, right? So a part of this elite family structure has a different maybe opinion, maybe was a part of the system, but was like starting to go a different road. And then all of a sudden, what happened to her all in a tunnel by any means, and just being a first responder, responding to tunnel stuff. Again, we don't have any here in Florida, but I could just imagine the traffic is so clogged that you couldn't get there in time to try and save anybody. So it's a strategic place for an event to happen. And you mentioned MLK, right? There's a thing that happens in our society that involves nepotism, right? That involves Operation Mockingbird and these examples that we can see that they plant certain people in our politics, in our news agencies, in social media influencers nowadays. And these people are linked to a network of control, if that makes sense. Some may be good, but forced to do certain things. Some may be bad and are just are just evil in their heart entirely, right? And this is just what they like to do. They like to fulfill their family tradition. If that makes any sense.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah.
No, I'm with you. And like I said, I'm not disagreeing that was probably involved with the killing of Charlie Kirk. What I'm saying is I don't think they killed him because he was turning against it. Um, because ultimately that's what they want. And there's a number of other influence out there that might have even more sway than Charlie Kirk that are extremely anti-Israel. Just take a look at Candace Owens. Look at this rising star, Nick Fuentes.
Mhm.
So there's many of people they could take out. The question is, why did they pick Charlie? And I think Charlie has this crossover appeal. And especially where you see the way the internet's making him out to be right now. Similar in the vein of Martin Luther King, and I'm not saying that he's not, I'm just reporting what I think I'm seeing. And he's this white Christian martyr. And that spreads all over the US along racial and religious lines. It spreads all over the world. You kind of saw that in this rally going on in England over the weekend, how definitely Charlie Kirk was incorporated into what they were doing. And maybe that even turbocharged it, got more people out there. Um, but shoot, let me just read something from Alex Jones real quick. The other side of the narrative, which unfortunately a lot of people are falling for too. He says this: I've been proven right again. Total vindication. Charlie Kirk's killer came from a good family, but a couple years ago, shacking up with a member of a death cult, and the demon had them a trained killer ready to go to war with their target of choice, Christians. We are literally in a spiritual war, and this is a demonic invasion. Now, right after that, guess what he started selling? Holy War t-shirts. Now, InfoWars is an intelligent operation. So whether you agree with what he's saying or not, I think as truth tellers, we have to ask ourselves, why is he saying that? And I think that's just to prop him up as this martyr. And just think about generationally how the killing of MLK affected the Black community and the liberal community overall. And just think how the killing of Charlie Kirk, this white Christian martyr now, is going to affect the white America. Except I think it's going to affect white America a little bit differently. This is coming right after the heels of what happened in Ukraine when that white lady supposedly got killed by that black guy. And that's a whole nother can of crazy worms we can get into. where a race war is definitely starting to percolate. And once again, you have these ops not leaving anything to waste. They're starting to push it. You have Christian pastors, they call themselves pastors. They're literally teaching their people to righteously hate because they say they hate you. It's time for us to righteously hate. So I think on the other side of this operation, this agenda, if you're not blaming it, they want you to blame the deep state, left, Democrats, whatever, to ignite this holy war, which ultimately I believe will lead to the destruction of America within.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, like, what is being pushed right now is maybe leading us to what comes first in the beginning of the birth pains. There's wars and there's rumors of wars. And obviously, when you make some of these correlations with Matthew 24, you go to Revelation chapter 6, you could look at some of the seals that are opened. Obviously, peace is taken from the earth. War is something that is normalized. And what makes me think of these things is because how much the media, and also coincidentally, just has turned up that, or has moved the camera angle on these kinds of stories. And these things happen not on a daily basis, but these things happen throughout America all the time. There are instances where there is black versus white all of the time, but it seems like in the past 2 weeks or week and a half, these events have conquered the people. These events have pushed the people into a certain ideology, into a certain thought tank. And now it, it seems like it's ready for, it seems like the pump is getting primed, right? And I always make this example for the pump getting primed because I think we really just need maybe one or two more events and a civil war will break out. And what I mean by priming the pump is, like, I'm a medic. So when we have someone that is an unwitnessed cardiac arrest, we do 2 minutes of CPR, which is called priming the pump. Because when we go there and we do 2 minutes of CPR and we're priming the pump, then we deliver a defibrillation because it has the most success rate. So when things are primed and built up in pressure, the release is easier, to let off, if that makes any sense, right? Or
Oh,
something to
yeah.
be more successful.
Yeah, and I was wondering, what is it gonna take? Because I always believe that, civil unrest is what they want. They want a civil war to collapse it from within before they collapse the entire system. I always wondered, what is it gonna take to get conservatives in America pissed off enough to go into the streets? And this selection by Carly Kirk to take out, in my opinion, was kind of the perfect selection because what you see is all of the conservative party and white Americans coming together over this one issue. And you have influencers 2 days before Charlie Kirk died, calling Charlie Kirk the worst person ever, a sellout to the Jews, this, and that, just calling him out like crazy. Nick Fuentes even went out and said Charlie Kirk can't even call himself a Christian. But you see how this one figure is bringing everybody together. And when people get together and start moving around in, groupthink ideology, guess what? It's like a tinderbox ready to explode. And you wonder how much more, a couple more things, what's it going to take to get this thing to ignite? And I think Charlie Kirk is just, a major stepping stone to their overall goal, which is, as we know, is civil war
Oh
within
yeah, dude.
America.
I know it. But and when you look at all these influencers, Candace Owens, uh, you know, Charlie Kirk, right? Nick Fuentes, there's Owen Benjamin. There's a bunch of different people, and it seems to be that the base of their, and this is nothing against them, right? But I'm just kind of just saying this. It seems like the foundation of their content creation is controversy within each other, or they're grifting off of the fact that people enjoy seeing them go at each other's necks, right? So I mean, this is something that also affects the people that are watching the content. This is something that affects the audience on an emotional level, and it's just a topol effect, right? I understand the Tolba effect pertains to, like, manifesting entities, but I look at the protocol, and the protocol is ideas become beliefs, beliefs become manifested. And so that whole idea, which is an occult practice, by the way, and it actually works. This is a part of the Hegelian dialect. It's just the sub protocol within the main protocol, right? And I see that maybe they're influenced in some sort of way. So one thing as a podcaster that I've felt the seduction into doing is to, you know, making content to conflict with other content creators. I don't know if you've maybe felt it as well. I've never followed through with it, but my goodness, have I felt it, because it would be good content. It actually makes something super organic. It makes something come out for the people to have a connection with rather than you just talking about subject matter, you know?
Yeah. Well, I'm with you, and I can just tell, I have a Instagram business account, so you could see the analytics of all your posts. You could see what post does well, you could see who likes it, how many shares it gets, and so on and so forth. And some of my content, I actually do call out the content creators, right? Because I think that, you know, I'm super black pilled. I think they're all in on it except for Jesus. But I always talk about we shouldn't pay attention to the talking heads and we should pay attention to what's talking in the Bible. But I can tell when I speak of these influencers, right? Not only does the algorithm love it and it starts getting, in such a controversial manner that will piss one side off and then make the other side cheer. Not only does the algorithm push it, but the people push it more. They like it more. They share it more. It's a combination of, you know, one, we want it. Two, the algorithm wants it, and then we're like, well, do we give it to them because that's what the algorithm wants? Trust me, there's nothing more maddening than having some fluff crap on your Instagram that goes absolutely viral. It has a good message in it, but then when you do something serious, the algorithm definitely clamps down on it, and people don't care as much about it anyways. Maybe that's what we're addicted to. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a dopamine factor. I think it really your brain is interested and gets this chemical release when you see these things because you're not directly involved in it. If anything, it's drama. It's like watching a movie, right? So you have this disconnection from it, but you're still enjoying what's being played in front of you. And one thing else I wanted to bring up as well, maybe just segue into another topic with the Charlie Kirk thing is the story seems to be a little weird. There's a lot of things that he took the gun apart, then he put the gun together again, placed it in the woods. This is where it was found. I've heard Navy SEALs talk about this, that it's extremely hard. Like we're talking about weapon specialists saying that they even think something is fishy from a 22-year-old kid that's not an expert, has no military experience, and is doing things that have capabilities of people that have been, in the military service for a long time and at a high grade. Again, you've got Cash Patel releasing the number 33, right? That they've caught the suspect in 33 hours of when the event took place. This is very interesting because this number 33 is everywhere. Could be coincidental. I'm not saying that it's, oh my goodness, everyone, this is conspiracy, but my goodness, does it always follow little events like this? It happened to certain things that took place in 2019 and 2020. We know that. It took place in the shooting in New York. It took place in way, way other shootings. There's these occult numbers that flow through the chart in these events. And I'm wondering if there's something to it. I know I talked with you a little bit. To me, it seems like this is like another calling card of these principalities, these agents that are in the spiritual realm that are actually influencing and making these moves, right? Like we're people, we're a spirit and a vessel. If anything, a sinful vessel, a vessel that we try to fight each and every day. But if people don't oppose the flesh each and every day, to me, they're just another lost individual that is falling into the puppet movement, right?
Oh,
The
without a
puppet master
doubt.
movement.
Oh, without a doubt. And there was a bunch of crazy things, but that's why I think they made it so in your face, so dramatic, and so like just life altering. When you shouldn't ever watch a person. I mean, in your profession, you might see it all the time, but just normal
It
humans.
still got me,
They
bro. It still
Yeah,
got me.
right. And I think that's so you don't pay attention to things like that, right? So you're like, wait a minute. that doesn't necessarily make sense about that guy jumping down, disassembling the gun, then putting it back together just for the, FBI to find in some wooded area. You have those images of his security team that's doing weird hand signals, right? You're like, "Whoa, what's going on here?" There's a bunch of other weird stuff that went on. I think, did you say there's no ambulance in the area as
Yeah,
well?
it did not, at least what I saw, Charlie got hit, his bodyguard came over and kinda nudged him very little, and that's what pushed him off his chair. He was already having momentum from the kinetic energy of the shot because it was on his left side, so he was naturally going to his left. Pushed him off the chair, and they immediately tried to give him care, but then they ended up just four-pointing him and getting him into an SUV and taking him away. As a medic, at least for someone a part of Charlie's team, if you have security, you have to have defense and you've got to have medical. You got to have you got to have both, right? Both sides of the coin because one treats the other. It's a benefit. Like for example, I'm hopefully if I hope I pass and everything, but I'm trying out for being SWAT medic for my department. There's a medic a part of that defense, you know, system because they go hand in hand. You need them. And the fact that there was no ambulance there, or even on standby, right? There was no one, no EMT with a medic bag or anything. All you need is just one trauma bag, right? Or something as far as a blood pressure cuff, a little sat machine that tells your oxygen levels or whatever. Just something super simple on a basic level, and then you call for medics to come and transport the patient or whatever. But you have someone that is supposed to be doing initial care. There's nothing that was there that I saw that was involved, right? I'm not now, who knows? Maybe there was something. It just wasn't initiated. There was no plan of action for when something like that was to take place. And it makes me question something because if you think of this, high school
There's a
football
medic there.
games, there's an ambulance there. There's a city ambulance there. If you're part of a municipal area, right, of some sort of population over 10,000 people, there's going to be an ambulance there. Now, if you're a part of a city or town that has a volunteer program, then maybe not. But this is the University of Utah. They have a medic staff there on site. They've got nurses staff there on site. They've got all this stuff that should have been involved, that should have been paid with overtime to be there, right? Now, on a medic standpoint, the only thing that I would be able to do for Charlie to treat him is to pack it with a hemostat gauze as best as I can, wrap that sucker up as tight as I could, try to ventilate him because he's not breathing on his own. And if you don't get good ventilations, right? If you can't ventilate, you can't intubate because this would be a terrible airway to like stabilize because you got hit in the neck, right? Then you'd have to crike him. But at that point, it's just a really, it's chaos, dude. But these are some of the, life-threatening interventions that you can do to try and help him, and none of that was done. Uh, Now, I'm looking at the human aspect of it. I'm looking at people that don't have that kind of training, and that's probably what I would have done as well, is just try to get him in the vehicle, put pressure on it, and go.
But wouldn't you
I
say
don't know.
his security detail should be trained in all of this?
I agree. I
And you know what's
agree.
interesting about their security detail? I have to look in the name. I forget what its name, but you know who owns it? That one guy named Jocko. You know the guy Jocko, the SEAL that's always on
Yes.
Rogan and stuff?
Yes.
And that one guy in the black that was giving those hand signals and stuff, you know what they did? They took his bio off of their website a couple days later, like gone,
Interesting.
not
Now
there.
that those signs, right, that we did see again, maybe it's coincidence. Maybe this guy had a itch on the brim of his hat and a itch on the side of his cheek. And I mean, coincidentally, right after that, you had the other guy kind of touch his right arm. But these are military signs as well for either I don't know it exactly, but they're signs to give off for some sort of shooter something, right? I don't know it exactly, but people can look it up. But I saw PBD, getting into it at
Yeah.
least.
Well, I'll
So
tell you one thing. I mean, I truly believe if they want you dead, they'll kill you. And this definitely required help from his security detail. It probably required help from certain organizations within the United States working along, whatever foreign intelligence agencies. It looks like Mossad was definitely part of this. Because, I actually like when we talk about intelligence. You had Austin Picard on your show recently, and he's really big into Operation Gladio. Were you able to talk to him about that at all?
Oh, yeah, he went ham on that.
So it sounds like the way he's describing it, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but Gladio is this umbrella organization, and within it, you have different intelligence agencies all working together, but kind of serving different interests at the same time. And to me, that's every time something happens, you just got to point to, yeah, it's one of them, but all of them know what's going on. And I think they have these blackout project or blackout groups where they probably don't even report to the head guys of the CIA. I mean, they probably really there's really decompartmentalized, and a lot of this stuff is off the books. But I think they were all involved to a certain extent.
Oh, I think so too, and especially when I've had experience at least being a first responder and seeing how things actually are dictated on a scene, and then seeing how the news relates it to the public. The news does in some sort of way amplify the situation like tenfold, or they say something that might not be true, right? Like the patient might be stable, but they may be saying, "Oh, this patient is in critical condition." But for Charlie's sake, the news was saying that he's in critical condition. My instincts were saying, "This guy's dead. This guy was a trauma code and was dead off the bat." I think he lost so much blood that was perfusing his brain initially, and when your carotid gets taken out, because some people are keep saying that it was the jugular vein, it was the jugular vein. A venous bleed does not shoot blood out. You saw blood pouring out, right? This is because the carotid arteries are under pressure. And if anything, you saw the amount of blood that actually does get pushed out of your heart. There's a thing called ejection fraction. The ejection fraction is based off of a couple of different things, but it's basically how much the ventricle actually fills up and squeezes and pushes out. And when he got hit on his left side, why it was so kind of uh, viscous and why it looked so much is because your aortic branch, when it goes to the left, right, it goes to the left like this, then your right one goes here. There's a curve over here to the right one, which causes a little bit of friction loss, which takes away some of that pressure. So the left one is like pathway of least resistance. And so what you saw was his heart beating still when he got hit, but when you throw trauma to that area and then the brain loses perfusion like that, then the brain goes into shock, right? Because it's not getting as much oxygen that it's supposed to be getting from the blood. That now you're most likely going to either go into like what's called PEA, which is pulseless electrical activity, and or you're going to go into ventricular fibrillation, or you're going to go into some sort of really severe heart dysrhythmia, and then you're going to code. But the whole thing I'm saying is, if you don't stop that immediately, within a minute or so, you're going
You're
to
done.
have problems.
Yeah, and you're right. The media definitely magnifies it too. And this is kind of the media magnifying it because, social media is the media these days. And I also it reminded me a lot of Jackie O, right? That was JFK's Jackie Onassis.
Hmm.
Right after JFK was assassinated, they paraded her around in a bloody dress, kind of talking to the media all disfigured and disheveled. I think for a reason to make that impactful like image in your brain. And it kind of reminded me of what they were doing. And I'm not saying that his wife was in on it, but the people that were putting together this whole, show of Charlie Kirk's body in the casket, I thought was a little forced too. I mean, 2 or 3 days into it, and she's calling for a battle cry in the national media. They're showing Charlie Kirk's open casket where she's touching it and crying it. These were all done on purpose to get at your heart, um, so they can program you and they can manifest
Hmm.
a reality. Now, this might be nothing. This might be something, and I think we got to talk about all things that we see.
Yeah, no,
Be
I agree with you because, and back to like from before. talking about Charlie, the news was saying Charlie was critical. And I was like, telling my mother, I was like, dude, I'm pretty sure he's dead, but they're waiting to disclose this kind of information in such a way to where it's going to impact the people the most. And who released that information, by the way? It was Trump. Trump was the one to pronounce his death to America. It just made it more eventful and emotional, right? It's something that, especially if people with families that are involved, they have a lot of control of what gets released because there's things that are called HIPAA violations or personal health information. There's all this kind of these legalities that play into all of this. And news agencies can't necessarily disclose certain information, I think, unless they're actually given permission to do so. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that that's true. I mean, it seems like things are moved in such a way to where, man, it just screamed theater.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, just how
And
and
maybe this is just how everything played out, bro. But
yeah.
I'm just saying, dude, it just, man, it was
Well,
it
maybe
was
this is where we get a little bit conspiratorial with it,
well,
but
hey, I mean, we've got to because we've got to think of these things.
so this might not be anything, this might be something, but if you look at a bunch of pictures, and listen, I'm a conspiracy theorist, and I used to call out Charlie Kirk all the time. And there's pictures of Charlie Kirk doing symbolism. There's pictures with Charlie Kirk covering that one eye. And what was interesting about this was when the wife was at the casket and touching his hand in front of the entire world to see, there was a giant ring on her finger. It was a capital G with diamonds on it. Now, within the Masons, the G is very symbolic, especially that capital G. It's right in the middle of their, what are those things called?
Right. The
Protractor or something
square
like
and
that?
compass.
The compass. A giant G just like that. And that's a reference to Gilgamesh, right? Who many believe is the first type of Freemason, I guess you'd say.
Mm.
That's who they worship as one of their deities. Who's Gilgamesh? He's the giant son of one of these fallen angel gods. So, I don't know what to make out of it. I just think that, to your point, there's a lot of stuff that's super weird. It's a lot that makes it look theatrical. And I think they put a lot of stuff in there to get us chasing our tails as well. I
Well,
think there's a whole
yeah,
bunch of
yeah.
nonlinear warfare. And you're like, what? And then you muck the waters up and no one knows what's real. I mean, I saw one video or one guy talk about this, how, oh, he was wearing what's it called?
A bulletproof
Bulletproof
vest.
vest, and it actually hit it, and it ricocheted, and it hit him, and then someone points out, and everybody's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah," and then someone points out, "No, he wasn't," and there's a picture of him sitting there with no bulletproof vest on.
Right, right. The narrative is all over the place, right? There's maybe not the actual narrative, but everyone else's narratives are all over the place and they're being pushed out on social media. I mean, the algorithm is picking it up and shooting it out of a cannon, for goodness sake. And I think that that's to do what it is kind of you're talking about. It's we're stirring up and muddying the waters so much that it's so difficult to really process what may be true, right? And again, like the things that we're talking about when we're getting conspiratorial about, and especially early in the game with what happened to Charlie, like we believe what happened to Charlie actually happened, but
Oh,
but
without a doubt.
I think that there's some things that just raise some curiosity, and that's kinda like what we're discussing right now, especially with the ring. Again, maybe it means Gucci, right? Maybe it means, all these other kinds of brands that it could be, but the camera guy was oh so focused on that 4 or 5-second clip of her hand touching his hand and the ring flashing. So, again, these things won't really come out, uh clearer. They'll come out more clear as time goes on, but what we're seeing, I think, is there is some sort of cinematics that are being played into all of this. Now, it could just be news coverage. I don't
Yeah.
know how it is nowadays, but you have to understand too, I'm an editor, you're an editor. We make content. We make content, we put it out in front of an audience. And at least when I'm doing editing, I know that when I'm editing, I want exactly what I want the audience to see on video or audio. 100%. Everything that I put out as far as short content, long content, whatever it is, I review it. I make sure this is exactly what I want the audience to see, and it gets put out there. Now, if we're talking about news agencies and the other areas of cinematics or video and audio coverage, they're doing the same thing. So there's reasons to why we're seeing what we're seeing. Is kind of like what we're getting into the conversation about.
Oh, yeah, and one thing that I found interesting, remember, if you wanna know why they do certain things, just pay attention to the reaction of people and what they're pushing after an event happens. And it was interesting to see that Nick Fuentes was out there calling for censorship. So there was a huge, 2-hour eulogy that he gave Charlie Kirk after calling Charlie Kirk not a Christian 2 weeks prior. Um, but in the middle of that, which somebody reposted this, he says that all these people who are either putting up distasteful memes about Charlie or saying, bad things about Charlie, that they should be censored, they should be deplatformed, they should lose their jobs. Everything that the right would be saying, weeks before this, as they say, if they did something that was pro white people or pro Nazi and they lost their job. So it's interesting to see these people call for something they diabolically, oppose, or you think they would oppose. But I think that just shows you how powerful these high impact events, especially when you traumatize somebody. I mean, that's when they're ripe for being programmed. I think that when you see a lot with MK Ultra, Manchurian candidates, there's a lot of reasons why, at a very early age, at least within some of these sex satanic cults, they molest these kids, they, mess up their brains because that's when they become programmable. So I think you see that with these high impact events, you get everybody scared. They start listening to people or things that they want to hear, and that's when they get programmed. So I just thought that was interesting that they're now calling for the censorship of this. And think about this. It's such an emotional topic that not that Nick Fuentes would ever listen to this podcast, but you could say that what we're talking about could piss him off or piss anybody off whose hearts are really going out to Charlie. And I'm not saying that my heart is not, but they're probably calling censorship for what we're talking about.
Right, right. And on top of that, man, the censorship, right? The censorship is something that's going to happen. It's something that's going to evolve from when it once started to where it's at now. And 10 years from now, I don't even know if I'll ever be able to have a platform because of what I believe in and what I speak about. But it makes me think as well that what is what is going to take place after an event like this has just happened. If we're comparing this kind of event, at least emotionally, to another 9/11 event or a JFK event or these high impact events, right? That change society, change laws. The people, if anything, advocate for certain things in which will only take human rights further away or strip them down until there's really nothing of it left. This makes me think of technocratic takeover. It makes me think of more higher surveillance with with areas pertaining to colleges, cities, and public domain where maybe not only where these political events will be held, but just where these mass gatherings will be, right? And so I think of Palantir, right? We're kind of getting conditioned to what Palantir is. Palantir, what is Palantir? It's literally a predicated system that not only works on a model, probably based off of sentient world simulation or right, but it it's something where it can now develop a model of you and predict if you're going to do something of harm or against anything pertaining to criminal activity. Now, will this also push the aspect of wearables? Well, we have a wearable kinda right now, it's just not, attached to our body, but my goodness, is it almost attached to our bodies, it's the cell phones. But maybe there'll be more surveillance pertaining to our personal devices. There's gonna be something coming out of this. There is a solution to the reaction. We just haven't seen it yet, but we're gonna talk about it, man.
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
it's
I think you nailed it. Problem, reaction, solution, and the solution is always federal overreach. And whether it's the surveillance state at these colleges, these campuses, coliseums, just anywhere people, are, they're gonna start saying, "Well, we need it, right? We can't have this happening. We can't have these, political figures getting taken out. We can't have politicians or businessmen being taken out." I mean, you saw that with, the CEO of what's the United Healthcare who was killed, by Luigi. Um, I also think the timing of the Charlie Kirk when it happened, it's coming off the heels of that white girl getting killed in a bus. It's coming off the heels of that kid that shot up that Catholic school. I think within hours there was a school shooting in what's it called, Colorado. And if you combine that with, 30 million illegal immigrants that are in here, people are calling for the federal guard. They're calling for a federal takeover of their national cities because, the people in charge allowed it to get so bad on purpose, both left and right. Don't forget, the Koch brothers who funded, a lot of the conservative party, a lot of the Democrat party are behind, this mass immigration or illegal immigration because it served their business interests. This is a 20, 30-year thing with illegal immigration. And um, I think it's all turning towards that surveillance state you're talking about. I think it's going to be a boots on the ground thing, but ultimately it's going to be Palantir. It's going to be biometrics. It's going to be you go into, a building, you scan your iris so they can register who you are. So they have tabs on everybody, but they're going to, fool you and, disguise it as safety when, clearly, if you've ever paid attention to history, the people in charge have never really cared about the safety of the people, right? I think it's all smokescreen, and I think it's mentally meant to control and surveil us, to your point.
I agree, man. And dude, I'm sorry, but it and some people may not agree with me, but I love people who don't agree with me. I still love them. We can have a conversation about this, but this screams Antichrist. When we're talking about this surveillance state, and we're talking about every movement that we're going to be uh, recorded by some sort of omniscient figure in some sort of way. Like, we're talking about something that will be able to not only absorb the data of our everyday lives, but something that will also know our thoughts, something that will know our actions and know what good or what evil we're up to in some sort of way. And you know who has that position right now in the world, at least for us, is God. God
Mhm.
knows what we're going to do. We with the Holy Spirit inside of us know that we have a pre-conviction before we actually do something where we know we shouldn't do, and then we get convicted, right? But I feel Satan wants the same power. He wants that same ability. And if you're talking about him maybe taking the throne on this world as a god, he has to work amongst the laws of physics here. He it's not a spiritual thing to him, it's a physical thing. So that's why when I look at these systems and softwares like Palantir, I'm like, dude, this is something pertaining to what's going to help either this queen bee of this hive mind, right? And we're all linked into it if you have the mark. But this is what we're getting into. There's precursors that happen before the actual, actual real thing takes place. And I think they want that. I think the elites want that. Number one, they've been wanting to control us since the beginning of time, since I mean, they're following family tradition, right? We're talking about, Cain getting casted out of the garden and building cities, and his sons built cities, and there was this idea, this utopia, golden age of Atlantis, or whatever it is you want to call it, but there was a hierarchy system to it, to where there was one that ruled them all, right? We're getting into like Lord of the Rings allegory here, and I think that these systems are only progressing us towards this idea of an antichrist, a one world ruler of some sort that has the technology to go out and actually monitor and surveil the people of the world.
Hey, I have a question. Can you hear motorcycles in the background right now?
No?
All right, good. There's these jerk little kids that roll around on packs on these little, like, scooters that are just so loud, so I'm glad you can't hear that. But, oh, I agree with you 100%, and I also wanna read to you, um, so there's a passage that says, "Even the elect will be deceived," right? And there's gonna be many antichrists that come before the main antichrist, right? So there, and this just goes along with this, racial war psyop that they're trying to push on you. Okay. Now, as you know, Elon Musk has made himself known as supporting this. Now he's coming out. He's like, this is attack on white people. He's going to donate, millions of dollars to have, murals of that lady be, painted all over the place. Now, and this is how your perspective on how you view the world will blind you from the beast right in front of you. All right. Now, Elon Musk clearly, like Peter Thiel, is building out the system for the Antichrist. And I think that anybody who knows the Bible, have listened to interpretations of prophecy, they know that there's a connection, whether it's even Peter Thiel talking about it. They know there's a connection between this technological technocracy system that we're going to have and the Antichrist. But here's another tweet from Joel Webbin. This Christian national pastor that's getting a lot of press right now because people are hurting from what they're seeing, and I understand it. But this is what he says about Elon Musk, and he's actually commenting on Elon Musk, bringing awareness that everybody hates white people now. And this is what he wrote, and this is from a pastor who should be warning you about Elon Musk. Because they hate you, Elon, and they will do the exact same thing to this country as they did in your nation of South Africa. I can tell your eyes have been open recently. I'm incredibly grateful for your voice. For the record, this is why we push back against H-1B visas. When white people become minorities in a country, they are oppressed. When whites are the majority, minorities are treated well. It's sad reality, but history proves time and time again it will help us. Now, I don't care if that's your opinion, but the fact that you are reaching out to a person as a pastor who's literally building out the system that is going to enslave us, has biblical prophetic implications, to me, it's absolutely crazy that he's doing that.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. And
And
again, there's going to be a falling away, right? I mean, there's going to be people that are of the church that are advocating for these certain things because they're moved in such a certain way that they're more or less relying on the gratification of what's seducing them into believing and wanting to contribute to this new society, and they're not asking the right questions. They're not asking, okay, if this happens, then what? Okay, if this goes down, what's the outcome? No one is asking these before, after, and the future of questions. And these are questions that need to be asked because then you could actually, if anything, you can prophesy something that possibly comes true. Now, people kind of look and they go, well, he said prophecy. Is he a prophet? The word prophecy in the Bible means to predict, right? Now, there's prophecy that God actually gives people, but in the end days, at least when I read some of those scriptures where, your sons and daughters will prophesy and, the men will dream dreams, that whole verse in that concept, I think we actually contribute to that. If we are in these times, if the birth pains are not too far down the road, and we are possibly in this last generation, then we actually advocate and we are working for the Lord to ring the bell or to spread the common sense of how we see things and to try and make it aware for others. And when I hear that, bro, that's crazy because how many people in church do you see go there, they listen to their pastor, and they're dogmatic on every single thing that he's preaching when he's just a man? And no one nowadays is going to the Bible themselves. People are, if anything, asking AI, what does this Bible verse mean? Or, hey, can you explain to me the book of Ezekiel in so many words? And they don't want to take the time to actually read God's word. and to dig into it and study it and to just build that kind of knowledge and wisdom. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I think you make a great point, especially the falling away of certain people in the church. And I think, once again, that's a result of these high impact events that are planned by these powers and principalities. That's that spiritual war that's going on. I guess what I would say is this: instead of joining any groups that sound attractive or look sexy based off how you're feeling, let's just go back to the Bible. Let's go back to what Jesus says we should do, regardless of when we are in the eschatological ladder. I mean, framework, right? What is that? That's the Great Commission, period. And
Yeah.
what does the Great Commission say? He goes, go out to the nations and baptize them and teach them everything that our Messiah has taught us. That's what we're supposed to do. Let's take another page out of Jesus' book. Let's try to glorify God in everything that we do. We're not going to do it. None of us are perfect like Jesus, but that's what Jesus was doing. He was here serving God, not to be served, but to glorify him, to show us his love. And I think that as disciples of Jesus, Christians or Christo literally means to follow Jesus Christ. We should follow what he says and not some slick shoe pastor or this influence or even what I say. When it comes to, my advice on life, go back to scripture. What does Jesus say? How does
Mhm.
that fit within the context of the Old Testament? Does it line up? So I mean, that's what I think that we should do and not fall prey to these tricks or these magic, rituals that ultimately are meant to lead us away from God. Because I think at its foundation, that's why they're doing everything they do.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that, man, entirely. And a piece of my heart wants to go out to just with the audience, just so we can kind of like help equalize maybe some of the things that we're talking about. I mean, from my standpoint, I I believe that what Charlie was doing, what preaching Jesus Christ in most of his debates, that he would go to universities. The main core that he shared with others was the gospel, and I love that about him. I mean, there was even devil worshippers that would come up to the microphone and debate him. There were witches that would try to cast hexes on certain conversations that they were having. It was actually kind of wild. Some of this stuff is viral videos. You can go check it out. But we need to be preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ like way harder than we've ever done in our life. And that's why I've been trying to, take this show to the next level, at least pertaining to some of my intuition that's telling me, dude, like, forget about how you feel about certain things. Romans 1:16 this thing, and just start swinging away. If that makes sense spiritually, I
Oh,
don't know.
hey, listen, I'm with you. And I had this conversation a lot with my podcast co-hosts who grew up in the evangelical circuit and got out of that, these, mega churches and stuff like that. And we're like, well, do they do more good than bad? And ultimately, it might be, a watered down form of Christianity and they might be talking about the prosperity gospel when that doesn't make any sense, but they are still delivering the message of Jesus. And you don't know what person really needed it that week, if they're fed by that, who goes in there, who went there the first time, heard it, and then turned their life to God. Like I said, I think everything when it comes within the control power, especially the religious aspect of it, which Charlie Kirk was a part of, it's definitely a mixed bag. And at the end of the day, Charlie Kirk, to your point, he wanted to college campuses where they reject this idea of the Abrahamic God and the Messiah. And he went in there fiercely and, he spoke for people who had no voice. And maybe in the process, he brought some people towards Christ. And it reminds me of a passage about the 99 sheep. And if you lose one, and if you have 99 sheep and you lose one, you go after the lost sheep, you find it, you bring it back, you're all excited and you're cheering. And then Jesus goes, I'm telling you this because the heavens feel the same way over one soul who that repents than over the 99 who do not need to repent. So
Right.
yeah, I think it's a mixed bag. I think ultimately Charlie brought back to people to Christ, which is why nothing I'm saying has anything to do with his salvation. I'm not even touching that. It's not my job. That's between God and Charlie. I just try to look at what's happening and why possibly this happened because I do believe the saying that the truth will set you free, and what sets you free from being a slave to the narrative, right? And I think ultimately that's what's important, and we got to discuss it to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, no, exactly, and that's why we have these conversations, man. I love having conversations with you because they get deep, dude. They get deep, man. And so I'll ask you this: what do you think is going to be something that takes place? I don't know, 6 months from now.
Well, it's weird. About the last 2 or 3 weeks, there were people all over social media, myself included, just and maybe people all throughout the world. People are uneasy these days, and they're like, "Man, the energy is changing. This is leading up to something big." And then all of a sudden, this Charlie Kirk thing happened. And to me, this just tells me they're releasing the floodgates. There's no more pulling back from this. If you ever thought that this wasn't going to happen, um, I think they just smashed that idea. If you ever had that, I think this is just, nailing it. I think ultimately, like I said, I think this is the beginning step of a collapse within America, right? I think before they collapse the entire system, they have to collapse it within, whether that's a civil war, whether that's, the banking system and Wall Street going down, because as we know, they want to replace the currency with the CBDC or stablecoin. But I think ultimately, if you also take a look at what's going on around the world when it comes to prophetic implications, you have to take a look at what's going on in Russia and Ukraine, and that alliance of the BRICS nations and Turkey versus the Western nations and NATO. That's coming to a point of no return. If you ask me, I think Poland just shot down some Russian drones for entering their airspace, and that was a violation of whatever that NATO treaty is. If a strike against one is a strike against all. I think you see right now holding nothing back. They just bombed over 6 countries, I believe, within the last week, which gives implications to the greater Israel projects about them establishing the original borders of Israel. So it lines up with biblical prophecy. I think you see the red heifer, which is a certain group within Israel and a Christian alliance here, as far as producing the heifers to make a sacrifice for the third temple to be built, which means the Dome of the Rock has to be destroyed, which I think part of this Iran Israel conflict's going to create. I'm not I can't see into the future, but if all of a sudden this Iran Israel war picks up, don't be surprised if you wake up in the morning with a headline reading, the Dome of the Rock has been destroyed, because they're going to rebuild the second temple or the third temple. And what's really crazy, I don't know if you saw this, that Adam King came out, because I know if you've been paying attention to the news, they just about 3 or 6 months ago, they said they had a mock sacrifice, right? They said
Yes.
none of the heifers were up to standard, but they practice it perfectly, right? Because trust me, they have a whole priest line that they've raised up since they were born to do this. They have the technology behind it to actually burn the heifers. And they said that the heifers didn't stack up. So they just did a mock sacrifice or a mock trial to practice all this stuff. But then there was that guy, Adam King, that came out, who's definitely tied to all this stuff, making the rounds, I think, on Tim Cass, saying, "Oh, by the way, that was BS because there was all this negative publicity on it." And there was negative publicity on it. I think people in Hamas and stuff in Palestine were calling this out. And they're sorry for my
Oh,
language,
you're good.
but they're like, these guys are crazy. Look what they're trying to do. And he said that they actually did it. And then he pulled out a little baggie that looked like a little gram bag of cocaine filled with heifer acid, ashes. And he was talking about their healing properties. So, and then I also think you have to take a look at China talking about invading Taiwan in the year 2026, which I think might be the final stressor within this global war, which will ultimately collapse the entire system, which then gives a space open for the Antichrist to come to power, bring peace. I think ultimately that's when this major technological revolution that we talk about all the time with these tattoos, biodigital surveillance, um, they're going to build this one world technocratic state. I think these gods of old are going to come back. We're going to start worshiping them. They're going to create this mystery Babylon religion. I also think they're going to scapegoat the Abrahamic faith, because ultimately they're going to get rid of all of them. They're going to blame everything on God, right? They're going to say, oh, the God of the Bible, he's the one to blame. Look at this holy war that happened in his name. These, gods older come back, and I think they're going to have this mystery Babylon
No, I
religion
I
where we
agree.
worship them.
I agree, and it's this new world order Gnosticism. It's the Luciferian doctrine, right, that is going to overrule after the destruction of the Islamic State, the Judeo-Christian religions. There's going to be I think this is when the Bible is getting into the wars and rumors of wars. I think it's not only, civil war pretty much everywhere, and peace is completely taken from the earth, but I think also it's the war between all of these religions. It could be a byproduct of World War III. It could be something involved maybe as the main event of World War III. But I think what's crazy is I had a guy on, his name's Greg, and he has the show, um, Strange Sauna, right? And he brought up on my show when I had him on about this Raelian cult. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Raelian cult, but this is a French guy who was told by an angel to go out into the desert and to bring a Bible with him. And when he went out there, he actually interacted with these, which these aliens called themselves Elohim, and they basically are telling him that they want some sort of headquarters, they want some sort of foundational setting here on Earth for when they do come back. This is a place that they'll be able to inhabit and or inherit. And that this is like their United Nations, if that makes any sense. This is played along with the New York Post back in, I think, 2017, 2018, or 19. I can't remember exactly. But this is where you've got this idea of this galactic federation of these aliens, right? You've got this thing now supposedly is going to make some sort of atmospherical contact with us, the Three Eye Atlas, right? This is either some sort of mothership. There's a lot of propaganda stirring up behind it, but everyone, especially in the alien circle, is getting all loosed up for this to happen. you know, this contact of some sort. You brought up the third temple, but pertaining to that Raelian cult, that's something that's also been mentioned in that whole story, is that the third temple will be this place that these Elohim come back and inhabit. Who knows if this is going to be a multiple god system that does come back, this mystery Babylon, but then there's going to be obviously one that rules them all. There's going to be this god of the gods per se, right? This counterfeit of our true God, who is the Lord of the Lords and the King of the Kings, right? If you kind of understand where I'm getting at with that, it's going to be a wild time, and I think for these certain things that we see developing as far as technology and advancements, there's going to be so much pushback that pertains to civilization, complying with their agenda. But imagine if these Elohim came here and said, "No, we're the ones that have been conducting and influencing this whole thing to happen, and we're here now to make sure it does happen." And so, boom, now you've got something big happening where people are they're gonna give up everything that they have because the event that's taking place is so real to them. And if anything, subconsciously, they've been wanting to know some sort of truth. And if this delusion of truth presents itself, people are going to eat it up. They're actually going to fall into this delusion, and they're not going to understand that the truth actually came years ago, right? The truth came and died on a cross for us years ago and changed the whole world. And this is where you've got this whole war between the battle of good and evil, right?
You know what I found really interesting about the whole Raelian thing? You ever seen their symbol?
Yeah,
It's a star, well, quote
the
unquote, the Star of David with a Nazi symbol or a
in the
swastika
yeah,
in the middle of it. And to me, that actually has implications to what we're seeing today and this manufactured fulfillment of this prophecy. Because if you go all the way back to, shoot, before World War One, and even before World War One, but really before World War Two, you see this working relationships between factions and Nazi factions. And with the Havar Agreement, right? Which actually allowed a certain number of, German Jews to actually bring 2/3 of their wealth over to Israel and safe passage down there before, the war started. Now, not enough of them moved down there, so they had this war to give the world an excuse to bring everybody in Europe back to them. But you also see that today, where the way I see this playing out. So I think they're using this political Zionism to collapse the entire system. And the Bilderberg Group, which is kind of behind this transhuman push with guys like Alex Karp, Peter Thiel, Eric Schmidt from Google, who are all on this. It looks like these groups are responsible for building out the infrastructure. And if you look at who started the Bilderberg Group, it's Prince Felipe of, I think, the Netherlands, who was a card carrying member of the Nazi Party. He's part of a lineage that goes all the way back to the Roman Empire, like many of these are. So you see this working relationship between these two groups that you think oppose each other. And you see that today. That's why I always say stay away from occult symbolism. And the two major dominating factions I see right now in the world, at least in the West, are rooted in occult symbolism. You have, this faction, which I believe is either the Star of Remphan or the Seal of Solomon. And then you have this new Nazi faction who, what's it called, had their occult symbolism with the swastika. There's a reason why all cultures had it back then, because that was a symbol of the gods. They might tell you what it means or it means something different, but make no mistake, the symbol comes from the gods. The Aryan mythos were the gods of Atlantis. It wasn't just some regular white people they were trying to create. So, and you see them going hand in hand, and they think they're diametrically opposed to each other, but they work together, because I'm telling you, to make the fulfillment of Ezekiel 38 and 39 completely complete in this interpretation, you need all the Jewish Americans to feel unsafe in America and start to deport themselves back to Israel, because that would mean the fulfillment of that prophecy. So I think it's not a coincidence that you see this polarizing conversation going on, between the Nazis, and they think they're fighting each other, but they're really helping each other out.
Yeah. And I think too, man, when it comes to this prophecy in Ezekiel, is it crazy to think that Noahide laws maybe follows something, with it?
I've thought about that. So, two things, because the Noahide laws are a real thing, right? There's no doubt that, people came over from APAC that had other interests where they wanted to implement these laws. I think under Bush, right, is when it first
Mhm.
came to fruition. However, I wonder about that, because as we know, um, a mystery Babylon religion is going to appear, which means they'll get rid of, anything Jewish, anything Christian, anything Muslim, anything Abrahamic. So I don't, and this is me, I could be, I don't really know too much about it, but if the goal is to create a mystery Babylon religion, or at least not the goal, but that's what prophecy tells us, I don't see how the Noahide laws, are gonna be everlasting or long lasting, because that would mean that people are still paying tribute to God Most High. I mean, maybe not their God, but when you think about that, to God Most High, and I think they're gonna get rid of all that stuff. So it's definitely a real thing. It's definitely a scary thing to think about when you read what's within these things, and that, our politicians have placed those in there. But as far as having any long lasting consequences, I don't know, because if the end goal is a mystery Babylon religion, I don't know how that plays into it.
I'm gonna look I'm gonna look this up, and this is what came to my mind. So instead of maybe, a Noahide law or something like that, we know the Antichrist is the lawless one. So there's going to be some sort of ethical or moral structure in which this person, this thing is going to bring. But the first thing that popped into my mind, and this is something that I actually visited in person, and this is the Georgia Guidestones. And so the Georgia Guidestones, which is in Elberton, Georgia, it's written down in multiple different languages. It's four gigantic stones with one pillar in the middle, and then like a rectangular stone on top of it all, which I wonder from the aerial what symbol that actually, resembles. So it's broken down into English, Spanish, Swahili, Hindi, Hebrew, Arabic, traditional Chinese, and Russian. I wonder if there's something behind all that. But on these stones throughout those different languages, it lays out 10 commandments. And these 10 commandments read as this. Commandment one is maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. Two, guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. Three, unite humanity with a living new language. Four, rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason. Five, protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. Six, let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. Seven, avoid petty laws and useless officials. Eight, balance personal rights with social duties. Nine, prize truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite. And 10, be not a cancer of the earth, leave room for nature, leave room for nature.
Hey, we know they like to counterfeit everything, so it's fitting that they created 10 of those, right?
I know, I know. Didn't the World Economic Forum or something also come up with their own 10 commandments and they did it on Mount Sinai or something back in the day? I can't remember exactly. I'd have to look it up. But I'll tell you that what the psyop has hit us so I'll tell you how the psyop has hit us so hard in a conditioning level with humanity. Because when I've actually visited these things in person, I didn't go by myself. I went with a few friends. And some of my friends actually had a different view of these than I did. I looked at these and I saw nothing but some sort of new world order government establishing a new regime of structured laws, and this is what all the other nations that are networked with this main hub of whatever. Because I always connect these things, this idea of a new world order to it has to have a hive mind. There's got to be some uh one country or body of of a geographical area has to make the decisions for the rest of them to follow in suit with. But when I was looking at this, I was like, man, this is not good. This is not good. The Holy Spirit in my gut was just kind of doing backflips
Just
when I
curious,
yeah.
the people you went with that had a different take on this, one, what was their take? And two, what was their spiritual beliefs?
So the spiritual beliefs were opposite of mine, I guess you'd say, right? I'm I'm a man who fears God. I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. I'm a dirty sinner. I need Jesus. And I've been at that time I was saved for like 14 or 13 years. I've been saved a total of 16 now. But my friends' beliefs were of the world. That makes sense. That's something I can kind of just generalize it
Mhm.
as. And I love those guys, and they love
That
me, and
doesn't
we
mean
have
you're
great
bad at all.
relationships. Yeah, yeah, no, no. But it's just funny how the take of the world, how it's just so funny how the Bible's so true. When we get saved as Christians, we there's a renewing that takes place in our mind. We become a new creation, and we
Oh, yeah.
become separated from the world. Jesus came to divide, right? And he's divided us from the rest of the things pertaining to what the world worships, or the structure of it, to be pretty much. And when I said, I think this is bad, I said it out loud. And then the other guys were like, really? Doesn't sound too bad to me. For anything, it sounds like it's pretty good. But I mean,
Oh,
that's just,
you mean wiping out 6 billion people in the process sounds good to achieve, their utopian society? And maybe that's hey, I'm with you too, especially as someone who was a non-believer for most of my life. The minute you accept God in your life, the minute, ask forgiveness for your sins and you start walking with Messiah, there's just a spiritual change in you. And what that is the Holy Spirit. And if you read Romans 8, your thoughts begin to think like God. And maybe that's, especially me, is you start to have a new appreciation for life and every life because you realize every life is a creation of God. Every life has a purpose with God. So when you look at something like, you know, there's only gonna be 500,000 people left or 500,000,000,000 people left on this earth, maybe that's the Holy Spirit was telling you, "This is not right,"
Yeah,
right?
and it's
Like,
the first commandment. It's the one that impacted me the most. You know?
did you ask them, like, about that? Did you say, "Well, how do you expect we're gonna get to 500,000,000 people? Do all these people deserve to die?"
Right, and I mean, we talk we because we're conspiracy theorists,
Yeah.
all of us. So we were kind of like, is there going to be some sort of 2019 event? Is there going to be some sort of event that they use as far as lowering the amount of people through crisis for this to take place? And then this is something that, because of the old world, burnt up, and it burnt up because of its roots, that this new world would now establish and maintain this size of people, so that we don't ever visit history again, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
logically you can break it down like that, but still we know these things just don't happen. you know
Yeah, right? I mean,
they they just don't naturally happen, and that's why I think they're really pushing a lot of things like climate change. I think they're pushing a lot of things as well pertaining to the medical industry and all that, to where it's part of a big idea to slowly bring, you know development of humanity,
well, I think
pertaining,
it
I'm trying to be easy with my words here, but just limiting us to a certain size over time.
yeah, well, I think, what that tells me, because that's their end goal. I think we're in the first steps of their end goal or the birth pains, right? It tells me, I mean, because I like to say that part of end of days prophecy is manufactured by the enemy. Because there's a lot of people that are hip to the whole Ezekiel 38, 39. The red heifers, and that these, cults are, trying to end the world, and that it's all fabricated, it's all manufactured. And I don't believe that to be true. But I think what this points to is that a certain amount of it is manufactured. It's almost like these fallen gods are trying to take us to a point on this earthly realm that's going to trigger God, right? To a point where he's like, okay, enough's enough. It's time to send in the cavalry. It's time to send in, Jesus on a white horse. But I think that's their plan, right? And they tell you, and it's right there to see. And I know it's just pretty wild when you see that and you show just a normie that. Hey, what do you think this means?
Right, right.
And they don't know what to make out of it.
And then they look at you and they can't compute what you're saying, you know? But this made me think of this as well. Revelation 6:8, and it says, "And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth to kill with sword and hunger and with death, and with all the beasts of the earth." So, just to me, it seems like a part of this apocalypse is for some sort of mass event pertaining to death.
Oh, I mean, if you read prophecy, I hope I'm not getting the numbers wrong, but it appears that humanity dies in three waves within prophecy. Right? You have the birth pains where I believe 25% of the population dies out through famine, wars, what are the four horsemen or whatever?
Mhm.
And then you have another aspect in prophecy where one third of, creation on earth die. And then I think you have like the balls of wrath or whatever, where 25% of the population dies. So we're looking at 25, then 30%, then 25. That's like 75% of the population
It's
dying
close, right?
according to biblical scripture, which is kind of along the lines of 500,000,000, because I don't believe that we have 8 billion people on this earth. It looks like that is a little telling.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt, dude. Golly, man. Well, you know what? I hope, you, me, the audience, people out there, families, we're all prayed up, start growing our relationship with Christ more and more intimate each and every day, start getting in our word, start studying for ourselves, start seeking the kingdom of God. more than ever. And we could just be crying wolf, right? But it doesn't seem that way when we look at things from the past 150 years and we look at technology. We need to look at the big picture and go, okay, something is going on. And I said this at work to some of the guys, and I think I started moving some gears in their mind because I said, look at what is going on. The last 150 years, technology has grown faster and has duplicated way more efficiently, and it has advanced tremendously than we've ever seen before. There's a reason behind that. There's a spiritual implication that is letting you know that there is something else here with us other than just us here on our own. There's the occult that is built into the fabric of our network that we see throughout everywhere in this world. There are governments, corporations, bankers, there's even people above them. There's families that are back that that are really ruling things pertaining to making decisions and how they want things governed in our reality. And with all of that coming together at once, there's just this convergence of everything to get us to where we're at today. We have to understand that where we're at in the timeline, things are only going to advance even faster. Because when you look at technology, technology advances technology. With the technology that we have right now, it's only going to advance that technology even quicker, and then quicker and quicker. The snowball is what I'm saying is is developing momentum, and it's at the point to where we should see it's rolling down the hill. Like we should clearly see it.
I wonder if, like, we already have that technology
Yeah.
and they're just rolling it out to us at a faster pace to come, comfortable with the idea of where they ultimately are gonna take us.
Mhm.
That's probably why you see, if you watch old, sci-fi movies from the '70s, you look at a bunch of stuff on there when it comes to technological stuff, you're like, "Wait a minute, we have that today."
Yeah. For real. For real.
So, I know I'm with you. You can't help but look at where we're going with regards to technology. And I think you also have to listen to what these guys are saying when it comes to that technology. And I think we've talked about this before, but I mean, what I see them doing with technology is just replacing God, replacing the function of the Holy Spirit, especially when you take a look at this transhumanist stuff, right? I mean, what they're telling you they want to do, they want to somehow, whether it's wearable chips or maybe it's changing your DNA at a cellular level for future generations where they're born in this world with this ability, but they want to connect us to the AI, and the way they describe this AA is a all-knowing artificial God, and at some point they want to make it a sentient God, and they want to hook us up to this God to get all the answers, right? So you can see when the Bible refers to the Holy Spirit as the Spirit of truth, they are mimicking it and they're connecting us to it. I mean, you even see this with Elon Musk. He released a AI companion that was very perverse. It was a anime girl with, yellow hair, and do you know what, he named her?
Oh my goodness.
You're gonna love this,
No.
Annie, but it was spelled A-N-I. Now, if you look at the Hebrew meaning of the word Annie, do you know what that is?
No.
I am.
Do you
Where
know
have
what's
you heard
crazy?
where have you heard
Star Wars.
what?
So Anakin Skywalker,
Mhm,
right, who was the chosen one who actually became like this antichrist figure,
mhm.
was his nickname was called Annie.
There you go.
Sorry, I just
It
had to
dr
throw that there.
Oh, you did. Well, Star Wars is part of the whole thing, part of the agenda, and without a doubt, they pull from occult and biblical roots, and they pervert them. But think about that, it's like, you have this AI grok, this sentient god or artificial god who created a companion named Annie, which means I am, and sent Annie into the world. Like, they really view this technology as a god, and that should no, I shouldn't say scare, but that should really open your eyes to what are these psychopaths really trying to do, whether you believe in God or not. The fact that they view technology as God and they wanna use it to control you, it should really give everybody, maybe to your point with the guys you're talking to, in the fire, wherever you do your ambulance stuff, they're starting to wake up to it.
Yeah, they are, man, they are, and it's funny, I am is God in the Bible, so there's a clear counterfeit going on, which the counterfeit is the Antichrist. So
Yeah.
it's wild. You make all these connections, man. Oh man, dude, I tell you what, it's gonna get dicey, but we're all here for each other. Ben, I appreciate you for having fun with me tonight, man, and having some deep conversation. Again, prayers and thoughts to Charlie, his family, his wife, his kids, everything that's been involved in this whole situation. Some people might disagree with some of the things we got into, but that's okay. But these things have to be talked about a little bit. And sometimes, like the main thing I think we got into in the show was we really have to start to detach that emotional response that may be what the people that could be behind an event like this want us to get emotional. Now it's normal. It's understandable. I got emotional. How I compare it is to my job, and my job's desensitized me on a whole nother level. But in order to make the correct decisions, in order to think clearly in what you have to do, at least pertaining to my job, you can't be emotionally attached to certain things, or else you can't think correctly, right? And that's just something that I just try to share with others pertaining to things that could be psyops that give you an emotional response, things that could be real impactful, hyper events like what we saw. Your emotions are the number one thing that's trying to be manipulated. If we could just step back just a little bit, understand, like live with it, right? But now we have to understand, okay, what's the outcome of this effect, right? You following with what I'm saying?
Oh, I'm with you. And, I guess I would like to, and we talked about this earlier to a certain extent. Um, but, I'm going to assume that Charlie was right with God and, he's in heaven with God. And if we really want to honor, Charlie Kirk, and like I said, I think this was definitely an assassination attempt, but if we want to really honor Charlie Kirk and the message he stood for, let's stay rooted in God. Let's stay rooted in spirit. Let's stay rooted in scripture because the biblical perspective is allows you to see through all this BS. I can't tell you how much it helped reading the Bible and then how it helped me put all the conspiracies I was learning into perspective, which ones to let go, which ones to not. Do they fall within this biblical framework? Well, in the same idea or same breath, apply that to our lives, apply that to these earthly movements. Does it fall within the Great Commission? And the only way you're going to know that and not fall prey to these traps that these powers and principalities and worldly governors are trying to execute on us is by staying deep in the words, by staying rooted in spirit and telling us that this is not right. And let's just honor Charlie and everything that he did by teaching people about God, teaching people about Jesus, and glorifying God.
Right.
If you don't want to go out in the street with a megaphone and look like a crazy man on the street, don't do that. That probably doesn't work that way anyways, but live a righteous life. Live a God fearing life. So when people start looking at you like, man, why isn't he breaking down like everybody else? They come ask you, what's your secret? What do you say? Oh, you give all the glory to God. Right. So I
Uh-huh.
think that's how we can honor, Charlie. That's how we can actually fight this agenda by one, understanding what it is. And that's a spiritual war manifesting as a physical one.
Yeah, right on, man. And I think too, what has come out of this whole thing is I think there is some sort of revival. I think God is working through this tragedy because even at home, my wife, my kids, like I hug my family a little bit more. I love them a little bit more. And also just with this whole thing going on, it's made me want to get back in some sort of community or church, or just try to share some of these things i- with my family, and try to live the happier lifestyle, or at least bring that back in to my circle a little bit. Not let the finances get to me, not let all this stuff get to me, because we don't know when our time could be. It could be today, tomorrow, whenever. And just got to kind of start living in the moment a little bit decompress a little bit, but still get back on the microphone and get out there and start getting the word out to people each and every chance that we can get. And so, but brother, I love you, man. I appreciate you for coming on. This has been, like I said, was a great conversation. Please, man, for the audience, just plug your information wherever they can find your work.
You can find me at End of the World News on Instagram. That's probably my biggest following. I then have a audio podcast that I release on BitChute. I mean, a visual podcast I release on BitChute, an audio one, same podcast I release across all platform, which you are going to be on soon. So everybody listening, come in and support your boy when he comes on the podcast. And I'm on X a little bit, but I don't really post too much there. It's just all types of crazy. But yeah, that's where you can find me. And thank you for having me on. I'm glad we could have this conversation. And hopefully this helps out some people just try to make sense of what went on. So, like I said, you're not a slave to the propaganda machine.
Exactly, man. Exactly. But folks, we appreciate you, man. We love you. If you want to support the show, you want to support Ben's platform, head on over to the YouTube or wherever, BitChute, hit that subscribe button, like the show, share it with your friends, drop comments wherever, whenever, right? That's the only place we get to really dialogue or engage with the audience directly. You could also support us on audio platforms as well. Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you can consume all your podcast content. That is where we are. While you're there, 5-star reviews only, folks. And hit that notification bell, drop a follow, all the good things. But with all that said, we appreciate you. We love you. We're going to see you next time.